Welcome to BeFM Drama, where we present some of the greatest works of English literature adapted for radio here in our studio in Busan. My name is Joshua Cornwell, and I'm the host of this program. Every day this week, we'll be continuing our exploration of the original Sherlock Holmes stories of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, presenting our adaptation of The Adventure of the Engineer's Thumb, a suspenseful tale that falls somewhat outside the normal structure for these stories. I hope that you'll enjoy this exciting tale as much as I did when I first stumbled over it as a child. Please sit back and enjoy as I take on the role of our stalwart narrator and chronicler of Sherlock Holmes, Dr. John Watson, as an unexpected patient rouses him from bed early in the morning with a horrifying injury and a bizarre story to tell. Of the many problems placed before my friend Mr. Sherlock Holmes in the years of our friendship, there were only two which I introduced to him myself. The cases of Mr. Hatherley's thumb and of Colonel Warburton's madness. The story of Colonel Warburton may be of interest to medical specialists, but Hatherley's case was so strange and dramatic that I think it the more worthy of being placed on record, even if it gave my friend fewer opportunities to use the remarkable methods of deductive reasoning that have made him so famous. Mr. Hatherley's story has been told more than once in the newspapers, but it's another thing to see the facts slowly evolve before your eyes, the mystery gradually clearing away as each new discovery leads a step on towards the complete truth. The story made a deep impression on me, and the passing of 2 years has hardly weakened its effect. It was in the summer of 1889, not long after my marriage. I had returned to medical practice and finally abandoned Holmes in his Baker Street rooms, although I visited him often and occasionally persuaded him to go so far as to join us for dinner from time to time. My practice grew quickly, and since I lived near Paddington Station, I got some patients from among the officials and passengers of the railway. One of these, a station guard I'd cured of a painful illness, had taken it upon himself to send me every sufferer he could find as a way of repaying me for my services. Early one morning, at a little before 7, a knock came on my door. It was the maid, announcing that 2 men had come from Paddington and were waiting downstairs in the consulting room. I dressed quickly because I knew railway injuries were often serious and rushed downstairs. As I descended, my old ally, the guard, came out to meet me in the hall. He closed the door to the consulting room tightly behind him and spoke to me in a whisper.
I've got him in there. He's all right.
Who is it then? By your manner, it's almost as if you've got some strange animal tied up in there.
It's just a new patient. I thought I'd better bring him around here myself. The way he was raving and carrying on, I thought he might slip away if I weren't watching. But he's in there, safe and sound.
Well, I must say that you've certainly raised my interest to meet this gentleman.
I go now, doctor. I have my duties just the same as you.
And off he went, without even giving me time to thank him. I entered my consulting room and found a man seated by the table. He was neatly dressed in a suit of heather tweed, with a soft cloth cap laid down on the books beside him. He had a handkerchief wrapped around his left hand, and I saw immediately that it was completely soaked through with bloodstains, so deep they appeared almost black. He was young, not over 25, with a strong masculine face, but he was exceedingly pale and gave the impression of a man who was suffering from an overwhelming shock it took all his strength to control.
I'm so sorry to call you so early, doctor, but I have had a very serious accident during the night. I came in by train this morning, and when I asked at Paddington where I might find a doctor, the kind guard escorted me here. I gave the maid my card, but I see that she has left it on the side table.
I picked up his card and looked it over. Mr. Victor Hatherley, hydraulic engineer, 16A, Victoria Street. That was the name, profession, and abode of my morning visitor. I regret that I have kept you waiting. You are fresh from a night journey, I understand, which is in itself a monotonous occupation.
Oh, my night couldn't be called monotonous. It was hardly monotonous.
My patient began to laugh. He laughed very heartily with a shrill, ringing tone, leaning back in his chair and shaking his sides. All my trained medical instincts as a doctor threw up red flags at that laugh. "Stop it! Pull yourself together!" It was useless. He was off on one of those hysterical outbursts which come from shock and relief when a great crisis is over and done. Presently he came to himself, very weary, panting and blushing hotly with embarrassment. I poured him a glass of water and mixed in a splash of brandy.
I've been making a fool of myself.
Not at all. Drink this. I watched him drink from the glass and saw some of the color return to his bloodless cheeks as the brandy did its work.
That's better. And now, Doctor, perhaps you would kindly attend to my thumb, or rather to the place where my thumb used to be?
He unwound the handkerchief and held out his hand. It gave even my hardened nerves a shudder to look at the injury he'd uncovered. There were 4 protruding fingers and a horrid, red, spongy surface of blood and tissue where the thumb should have been. It had been hacked or torn right out from the roots. Good heavens! This is a terrible injury. It must have bled horribly.
Yes, it did. I fainted when it was done, and I think that I must have been unconscious for a long time. When I came to, I found that I was still bleeding, so I tied one end of my handkerchief very tightly round the wrist and braced it up with a twig.
Excellent. You should have been a surgeon.
It is a question of hydraulics, you see, and comes under my field of expertise.
This has been done with a very heavy and sharp instrument.
It was a thing like a cleaver.
An accident, I presume?
By no means.
What? A murderous attack?
Very murderous indeed.
You horrify me. I sponged the wound, cleaned it, dressed it, and finally covered it over with cotton wadding and carbolized bandages. He lay back without wincing, though he bit his lip from time to time. How is that?
Capital. Between your brandy and your bandage, I'm a new man. But good Lord, I feel weak. I've endured much this morning, I fear.
Perhaps you had better not speak of the matter. It's clearly been hard on your nerves.
Oh no, it's all right. I have to tell my tale to the police, but between ourselves, if it were not for the evidence of this wound of mine, I might think the whole thing an awful dream. I would be surprised if the police believe my story at all, for it is very extraordinary, and I have no proof to back it up. Even if they do believe me, the clues I can give them are so vague. It is questionable whether justice will be done.
Ha! If it is anything in the nature of a problem you desire to have solved, I strongly recommend you to come to my friend Mr. Sherlock Holmes before you go to the official police.
Oh, I've heard of that fellow. I would be very glad if he would take an interest in the matter, though of course I must use the official police as well. Would you give me an introduction to him?
I'll do better. I'll take you round myself.
I should be immensely obliged to you.
We'll call a cab and go together. We shall just be in time to have a little breakfast with him. Do you feel up to it?
Yes, I shall not feel better until I have told my story in full.
My servant will call a cab, and I shall be with you in a moment. I rushed upstairs, explained the matter shortly to my wife, and in 5 minutes was inside a hansom, driving with my new acquaintance to Baker Street. What will Dr. Watson and Victor Hatherley find when they reach the offices of the eccentric and brilliant consulting detective Sherlock Holmes? How has Hatherley's horrible injury come to be, and what strange story does he have to tell? Join us tomorrow evening here on BeFM Drama as we continue the gripping adventure of the engineer's thumb. From the BeFM studios in Busan, I'm your host, Joshua Cornwell.